British General Thomas Gage didn't know it yet, but his big secret was about to be spilled here at the Old North Church in Boston. General Gage thought he had it all figured out. On April 18, 1775, he crafted the perfect plan to secretly march British troops here to Concord, Massachusetts, to seize provincial military stores. Secrecy? Well, that's where things begin to fall apart. Quickly, like at the speed of light. These are General Gage's actual orders to Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith, written on April 18, 1775. March with the Corps of Grenadiers and Light Infantry put under your command with the utmost expedition and secrecy to Concord. And within hours, these secret orders would spark the American Revolution. The British were finally making their move to seize American military supplies stockpiled at Concord. But anticipating this, Paul Revere had arranged for signal lanterns to be hung in the steeple of the Old North Church. You know, one if by land, two if by sea. General Gage didn't know it yet, but the second those two tiny, delicate candle flames blinked on in the night sky over Boston, his secret plan began to fall apart. The British were still assembling over on Boston Common, but the signal light had already traveled across the Charles River. And soon, a midnight express rider would as well. Knowing the speed with which information could travel through the Massachusetts countryside due to the networks of alarm riders, General Gage put counterintelligence measures into place. Gage's orders to Lieutenant Colonel Smith said, "A small party on horseback is ordered out to stop all advice of your march getting to Concord before you." To keep the secret of this expedition, General Gage dispatched British officers on horseback to ride through the countryside and seize any person who could spread the news of the British march through the country. Unfortunately, that included Paul Revere. This is the Paul Revere capture site. At about 2 a.m. on the morning of April 19, 1775, Paul Revere was captured at about this spot, and his midnight ride came to an end. But at this early hour, the biggest threat to the British wasn't yet the stockpile of stores and weaponry at Concord, or the companies of militiamen who had not yet fully assembled. In the dead of night, the biggest enemy that the British were up against was the spread of information, the provincial alarm system. The British did capture Paul Revere here and put an end to his famous midnight ride. But somebody else slipped past. Hours later, the British approached here. We are at Lexington Green. And in the gray light of dawn, the British saw Captain John Pack, his company of militiamen, assembled here on the green, extending from about this rock to that monument on the other side of the green. And General Gage's orders to Lieutenant Colonel Smith said, "You will take care that the soldiers do not plunder the inhabitants or hurt private property." But when the British got here to Lexington Green, a lot more than just private property was hurt. Famously, a shot rang out, and nobody knows exactly from where. But the British fired upon Captain Pack's men here on the green. 18 people were shot, 8 killed. The British won this confrontation, but it cost them. The shocking news of militiamen killed here on Lexington Green traveled faster than the British could march. General Gage's secret plan was very quickly coming unraveled. Hi everyone, I'm so sorry for the intrusion, but there were some things that I wanted to mention in this video that I forgot to. So I'm jumping in now. The first is that General Gage's orders to Lieutenant Colonel Smith that I've been showing at intervals in this video have been digitized. They're in the collection of the Clements Library in Michigan, and I will put a link to the digitized copy in the description box below. It's incredible to me to see April 18th, 1775 written out, because you just know that these orders were written in those final hours leading up to the start of the American Revolution. So very, very powerful, very, very poignant just to look at that document, look at the date of April 18th, and think of everything that hadn't happened yet, but that was to come. And the second thing I wanted to mention, and this was a surprise. It was a surprise to me, and now it's going to be a surprise to you. If you are watching this video on the day it is published on YouTube, it is April 18th. I did not plan it this way. If you're watching this on the day it's released, it is the 251st anniversary of the actual writing of those orders and of several of the events that we're talking about in this video, such as the hanging of the lanterns in the steeple of the Old North Church. So if you're watching this on April 18th, maybe just take a few extra moments to think that 251 years ago, today or tonight, these events were actually happening. And then lastly, before we get back to the video, if you're enjoying this video, or if you just want to show your support to YouTube for non-AI content, if you could consider giving this video a like or a hype, I would be very appreciative. Liking videos, hyping videos, super thanks, subscribing, those are all the factors that YouTube looks at in order to determine whether to promote a channel or not. So if you're enjoying this channel, or if you learned something new, or if you just want to show your support to creators who actually create their own content and aren't using AI, then I hope you'll consider giving this video a like and subscribing. Thank you all so much. The British have just left a scene of absolute devastation on Lexington Green, and they have continued on their expedition out to Concord. So let's get back to the video. The British make it here to Concord. They have reached their destination and they know exactly what they're looking for. The gunpowder and musket balls, the pork, the beef, the flour, the tents, the wooden spoons, the wooden plates, all of the things, the real world things necessary to support an army. Gage's orders directed Smith that the powder and flour must be shook out of the barrels into the river, the tents burnt, pork or beef destroyed, and the men may put balls or lead in their pockets, throwing them by degrees into ponds and ditches. Before we go on, I'm ditching the winter coat. A funny thing is that this video has taken 2 days to film, and so when I started it at the Old North Church in Boston, it was 35 degrees. So it was pretty cold. But today, less than 48 hours later, it is almost 75. So spring in New England, I'm getting rid of this winter coat for the rest of the video. Gage's troops pour into Concord, here into the center of town, and they begin pulling out stockpiles of stores and setting them on fire. But there's something wrong. The stores are sparse. The stockpiles are thin. There are just not as many supplies here in Concord as there should have been. But the British march to Concord doesn't end with the burning of some supplies in the middle of town. There is one more place the British must check, but it's located beyond Concord Center, and it promises to be a treasure trove of provincial supplies, including cannon. But to get there, the British must cross and hold the North Bridge. Gage directed Smith that it will be necessary to secure the 2 bridges as soon as possible. A couple companies of British troops secure the bridge while other companies cross it and continue on the search for stores. The British are not doing any of this unobserved. Militia companies from Concord and nearby towns have gathered on a nearby hill and are watching their every move. Hi everybody, I just wanted to break in really quickly and say this is April in Concord. I'm filming this video just a couple days before April 19th, the 251st anniversary of the battles of Lexington and Concord. And so I just wanted to pause and give you a sense of what the landscape really looks like here at this time of year. You can see there are no leaves on the trees. There are some tiny buds maybe on some of them, but in mid-April we don't have leaves yet. Though the grass is green, we've got some daffodils, it's still really early spring. So I wanted to kind of just take a time out and maybe give you a sense of what that April morning might have felt like. The British troops who crossed the North Bridge continued their search here. This is the farm and house of James Barrett, a colonel in the Massachusetts militia, and intelligence had reached General Gage that stores and cannon were hidden here. And they're right. The Massachusetts Provincial Congress, in which Colonel Barrett served, had appointed him to manage all of the military stores in Concord. And he even hid some on his own property. You have a draft of Concord on which is marked the houses, barns, etc., which contain the military stores. And the orders go on to say that if any cannon are found, you will order a trunnion to be knocked off each gun, but if it is found impracticable on any, they must be spiked and the carriages destroyed. But no cannons are found here. After their 20-mile middle-of-the-night march to Concord, the British come up empty-handed. The supplies had already been moved or hidden. In fact, the legend is that some cannons were buried in the furrows of Colonel Barrett's fields. The alert system, that quick spread of information, had gotten the best of the British here in Concord. In fact, Paul Revere's ride out to Concord on the night of the 18th wasn't the first time that month that he had traveled to Concord. He had already been out here at least twice earlier in the month to alert town officials of some suspicious movements and activities that the British were undertaking in Boston that made it appear that an expedition was imminent. The supplies here in Concord had already been largely moved out of town even before the British got here, thanks to that early warning system devised by the provincials. Not only that, but it was Dr. Samuel Prescott who managed to slip through the trap set by the British officers at the Paul Revere capture site in Lincoln, and he managed to spread the news to the town of Concord. So the people knew the British were coming before they even got here. The British troops who searched Barrett's farm withdrew to the North Bridge, and the militia who gathered on the nearby hillside watching them started to march down this very road that I'm on now, headed to the bridge. As the Americans advance on the bridge, the British fire upon them. 2 Americans are killed and more wounded. And then, for the first time in history, the Americans are ordered to fire upon the British. And it's hard to miss the irony here. General Gage's secret expedition to Concord to seize military supplies culminated in the shot heard around the world. For a minute-by-minute description of what happened when the militiamen advanced on the bridge, I hope you'll watch this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.